The roar of jet engines cuts through the Alabama sky as a family aircraft spirals toward disaster, its engine trailing black smoke like a death sentence written against the clouds. Below, 212 children laugh and play in a school courtyard, unaware that they have mere seconds to live. In that crystalline moment between life and death, one pilot must choose between personal survival and the ultimate sacrifice. But this isn't just a story about a single act of heroism. It's about what happens when the hero survives, scarred and broken, forced to rebuild not just her body, but her very identity. It's about the price of courage, the weight of survival, and the discovery that sometimes our greatest victories come not from soaring through the skies, but from teaching others how to fly. Commander Lisa Hayes thought her story ended in flames over Mobile, Alabama. She was wrong. It was just beginning. In the unforgiving world of naval aviation, where split-second decisions determine who lives and who dies, one woman's journey from celebrated pilot to hidden mechanic to inspiring leader will challenge everything you think you know about heroism, redemption, and the true meaning of service. Welcome to a story that will take you from the depths of despair to the heights of hope, proving that sometimes the greatest flights happen with both feet on the ground. We'd love to know where you're joining us from. Drop a comment letting us know your location as we embark on this emotional journey together. And here's a question for you. What draws you most to military aviation stories? Is it the technical precision, the brotherhood and sisterhood of service, or the way these men and women face impossible choices with unwavering courage? Share your thoughts below as we prepare to witness one pilot's extraordinary transformation from the ashes of tragedy to the triumph of purpose. The pre-dawn darkness of Naval Air Station Pensacola wrapped around Lieutenant Commander Lisa Mitchell like a familiar shroud. At 0400 hours, the massive hangar stood empty, except for the silent sentinels of American aviation power, 3 FA-18 Super Hornets gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. Lisa's scarred hands moved with practiced precision across the aircraft's surface, her fingers reading the metal like braille. Every rivet, every panel, every system held secrets that only someone who had truly flown these machines could understand. The burn scars on her left arm caught the light as she reached into the engine compartment, checking fuel lines with the methodical care of someone who knew that lives depended on perfection. The hangar echoed with her footsteps as she circled the lead aircraft, her slight limp barely noticeable after 3 years of adaptation. Her regulation Navy working uniform was immaculate, sleeves rolled down despite Florida's oppressive humidity. The baseball cap pulled low over her face cast shadows that mercifully hid the worst of the scarring on the left side of her neck and jaw. This was her sanctuary. In these quiet hours before the base awakened, she could work without curious stares or whispered comments. Here, surrounded by the machines she once commanded with legendary skill, Lisa could almost forget what she had lost. The peace shattered at 0530 when the hangar doors rolled open with a mechanical groan. Major Derek Stone strode in with the swagger of a man who had never questioned his place in the world. His flight suit was pressed to perfection, aviator sunglasses perched atop his regulation haircut despite the early hour. Behind him followed 3 junior pilots, their conversation loud and careless in the sacred quiet of the hangar. "Jesus, Mitchell," Derek's voice cut through the space like a blade. "Don't you have somewhere else to be? Some people actually need to fly these birds." Lisa straightened slowly, her tools still in hand. She had learned not to respond to his provocations, but something in his tone this morning carried extra venom. "Sir, I'm conducting the pre-flight inspection on aircraft 701, she replied, her voice steady and professional. "The fuel pressure readings were inconsistent yesterday." Derek laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Fuel pressure. Listen, sweetheart, leave the technical stuff to people who actually understand aviation. You just make sure the tools are clean." The junior pilots shifted uncomfortably. Lieutenant Jessica Chen, the youngest of the group, frowned at Derek's tone but said nothing. Lisa's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Sir, with respect, the fuel manifold pressure should read between 28 and 32 psi at idle. Yesterday's reading was 35 psi, which indicates a potential blockage in the secondary fuel line that could cause engine failure during high-G maneuvers." The hangar fell silent. Derek's face flushed red as he realized she was correct, and that he hadn't known the specification himself. "Well, well," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper as he stepped closer. "The garage mechanic thinks she knows better than trained pilots. his eyes fixed on the scars visible beneath her cap. Maybe if you spent less time trying to be something you're not, and more time accepting what you are, we'd all be better off. The words hit like physical blows. Lisa's scarred hands trembled slightly as she set down her tools with deliberate care. Around them, the other pilots looked away, uncomfortable witnesses to cruelty they lacked the courage to challenge. "I'll complete the inspection and file my report, sir," Lisa said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Derek smiled coldly. "You do that. And next time, remember your place." As the pilots walked away, their voices fading into the distance, Lisa stood alone among the aircraft that had once been her domain. The scars on her face burned with remembered shame, but her hands remained steady. She had work to do. Outside, the Florida sun began its climb into another scorching day. But in the shadows of the hangar, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Mitchell continued her silent vigil, guarding secrets that could change everything. Dr. Patricia Morrison's office felt smaller than usual, as Lisa sat rigidly in the leather chair, her scarred hands folded precisely in her lap. The afternoon sun filtered through Venetian blinds, casting prison bar shadows across the wall behind the psychologist's desk. "How are you sleeping, Lisa?" Dr. Morrison asked, her voice gentle but probing. "Fine, Ma'am." The lie came easily after 3 years of practice. "The nightmares." Lisa's fingers tightened almost imperceptibly. "Less frequent." Dr. Morrison made a note, her pen scratching against paper like fingernails on metal. "Tell me about this morning." Sarah mentioned there was an incident in the hangar. The memory of Derek's words burned fresh in Lisa's mind. She could still feel the weight of the other pilot's stares, the suffocating silence that followed his cruelty. But admitting weakness felt like another kind of defeat. Major Stone was conducting his pre-flight briefing. Nothing unusual. "Lisa." Dr. Morrison leaned forward, her eyes kind but insistent. "We've talked about this. Isolation isn't healing." The words triggered something deep and painful. Suddenly, Lisa was back in the cockpit of Blue Angel 6, the Alabama sky stretching endlessly before her. The radio crackled with routine chatter, her wingmen's voices confident and sure. She had been invincible then, untouchable, soaring through the heavens with the precision of a surgeon and the grace of a dancer. Then came the emergency call. Civilian aircraft in distress, children aboard, school directly in the impact zone. The choice had taken less than 3 seconds. Physics and mathematics and the cold calculus of sacrifice. 200 innocent lives versus 1 trained pilot. The equation was simple, even if the execution was not. "I dream about the children sometimes," Lisa whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. "Not the ones I saved, the ones I might not have." Dr. Morrison's pen stopped moving. "What do you mean? What if I had hesitated? What if my reflexes had been slower? What if—" "Lisa, stop!" The psychologist's voice was firm. "You saved 200 children. You're a hero." "Heroes don't hide in maintenance hangars," Lisa's voice cracked slightly. "Heroes don't let people like Derek Stone walk all over them." The session ended 20 minutes later, with the usual platitudes about progress and healing. Lisa walked across the base toward the enlisted mess, but the familiar weight of stares and whispers drove her away. Instead, she found herself back in Hangar 7, eating a cold sandwich among the silent aircraft. "Thought I might find you here." Sarah Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, her maintenance coveralls stained with hydraulic fluid and determination. "You missed dinner again." "Not hungry." Sarah pulled up a tool cart and sat down uninvited. "Derek's been running his mouth all afternoon, telling anyone who will listen that you don't know your place." Lisa's jaw tightened. "Let him talk." "Why?" Sarah's voice carried 3 years of frustration. "Why do you let him treat you like garbage? You know more about these aircraft than he'll ever learn." "Because it doesn't matter what I know." Lisa's voice was barely audible. "Lisa Hayes died in that crash. I'm just what's left." "Bullshit." Sarah's profanity echoed in the hangar. "Lisa Hayes is sitting right here, too scared to fight back." "I'm not scared." But even as she said it, Lisa knew it was another lie. She was terrified, not of Derek Stone, but of what would happen if people discovered who she really was. The weight of expectations, the burden of living up to a legend she no longer felt worthy of carrying. As Sarah left, shaking her head in disgust, Lisa remained alone with the machines that had once been her partners in an aerial ballet. Tomorrow would bring another day of Derek's cruelty, another test of her resolve to remain invisible. But in the growing darkness of the hangar, something stirred, a flicker of the pilot she had once been, buried but not destroyed. The morning briefing room buzzed with nervous energy as 8 junior pilots prepared for formation flying exercises. Major Derek Stone stood at the front, his flight suit immaculate, pointing at the tactical display with the confidence of someone who had never faced real danger. "Today we're practicing diamond formation at Angels 15, Derek announced, his voice carrying the authority he craved. "Tight spacing, precision timing. This isn't kindergarten flying, people." Through the hangar's observation window, Lisa watched the briefing while performing routine maintenance checks. Her scarred hands moved automatically across the aircraft's control surfaces, but her attention was fixed on the young pilots hanging on Derek's every word. Lieutenant Jessica Chen raised her hand tentatively. "Sir, what's the minimum separation distance for diamond formation?" Derek's smile was condescending. 3 feet wingtip to wingtip. If you can't handle that, maybe you should consider a desk job." Lisa's hands froze on the aileron. 3 feet was suicide for inexperienced pilots. Standard training protocol called for 10 feet minimum, working down to 5 feet only after months of practice. She watched Derek's casual arrogance with growing alarm. The pilots filed out toward their aircraft, and Lisa found herself following at a distance. Captain Michael Thompson appeared beside her, his weathered face creased with concern. "He's going to get someone killed," Thompson muttered, his voice barely audible. Lisa glanced at him sharply. Thompson had been her wingman in the Blue Angels, back when she was Commander Lisa Hayes, back when her face was unmarked and her hands steady on the stick. But he showed no sign of recognition. The scars and 3 years had changed her that much. "The formation spacing is within acceptable parameters," she said carefully, maintaining her cover. Thompson's eyes narrowed slightly. "Since when do maintenance officers know formation protocols?" Before Lisa could answer, the roar of jet engines filled the air. The 8 FA-18s taxied toward the runway in perfect sequence, Derek leading in aircraft 701. Lisa's chest tightened as she recognized the tail number, the same aircraft she had inspected that morning, the same model she had once flown with supernatural precision. The formation took off in pairs, climbing into the crystalline Florida sky. Lisa found herself drawn to the control tower's observation deck, her heart pounding with a mixture of longing and dread. Through binoculars, she tracked the aircraft as they formed up at 15,000 feet. The radio crackled with Derek's voice. "Diamond formation, tighten it up. Chen, you're drifting." Lisa watched through the binoculars as the 4 lead aircraft moved closer together. Too close. Derek was pushing them beyond their skill level, his ego demanding perfection regardless of safety. "Blue leader, this is Pensacola Tower." The air traffic controller's voice carried tension. "Your formation appears tight for training parameters." "Tower, we're within specifications." Derek's voice was sharp with irritation. Lisa's hands trembled as she adjusted the binoculars. In the diamond formation, she could see Lieutenant Chen's aircraft wavering slightly, the young pilot struggling to maintain position. The other wingmen were equally unstable, their aircraft dancing dangerously close to collision. Then it happened. Chen's aircraft drifted left just as Derek executed a sharp right turn. The 2 jets converged with terrifying speed, their wingtips missing by inches. Chen yanked her stick hard right, overcorrecting violently, her aircraft rolling inverted and diving toward the earth. Without thinking, Lisa grabbed the radio microphone from the startled controller. "Rookie 7, this is base. Recover immediately. Roll wings level, pull power to 60%, gentle back pressure on the stick, do not overcorrect." Her voice carried the unmistakable authority of someone who had lived through 1,000 similar moments. Chen's aircraft responded instantly, rolling upright and pulling out of the dive with textbook precision. The control tower fell silent. Every technician, every controller, every observer stared at Lisa with expressions ranging from shock to recognition. Her voice, calm, professional, commanding, had revealed more than any uniform or nameplate ever could. Derek's voice crackled over the radio, furious and confused. "Who the hell was that? Tower, identify that transmission." But Lisa was already walking away, her cover blown, her carefully constructed anonymity shattered by instinct and training that ran deeper than fear. Behind her, she could hear whispered conversations beginning, pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. In the distance, 8 aircraft landed safely. their pilots unaware that they had just been saved by a ghost. The base gymnasium echoed with the rhythmic thud of Derek's fists against the heavy bag. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he unleashed his frustration on the leather, each punch punctuating his anger over the morning's humiliation. 3 years I've been flying these missions, he muttered between strikes. 3 years, and some scarred-up mechanic thinks she can school me over the radio. Lieutenant Brad Wilson, Derek's closest ally among the junior officers, nodded sympathetically while adjusting his workout gloves. It was pretty embarrassing, man. Half the tower heard her correct you. Derek's next punch landed with explosive force. That's exactly the problem. She made me look like an amateur in front of the whole squadron. His eyes gleamed with malicious intent. But I've got an idea for the promotion ceremony tomorrow night. Across the base, Lisa sat alone in her sparse apartment, staring at a framed photograph hidden in her dresser drawer. The image showed her in full Blue Angels regalia, standing beside her FA-18 with a brilliant smile, unmarked by scars. Commander Lisa Hayes, the pride of naval aviation, the woman who could make a $50 million fighter jet dance like poetry in motion. Her reflection in the dresser mirror told a different story. The burn scars stretched from her left temple down to her collarbone, a permanent reminder of the price of heroism. Her hands, once steady enough to thread a needle at 300 knots, now trembled slightly as she traced the damaged skin. A knock at her door interrupted her brooding. Dr. Morrison stood in the hallway, her expression concerned but determined. "May I come in, Lisa?" They sat at Lisa's small kitchen table, the silence stretching between them like a chasm. Finally, Dr. Morrison spoke. "What happened in the tower today? That wasn't the voice of someone who's given up. That was the voice of a pilot." Lisa's fingers wrapped around her coffee mug, seeking warmth that wouldn't come. "I reacted. Nothing more. You saved that young woman's life. Lieutenant Chen could have died if you hadn't intervened. Anyone with training would have done the same." Dr. Morrison leaned forward, her voice gentle but insistent. "Lisa, you can't hide forever. Tomorrow's promotion ceremony, it's time people knew who you really are." "No." The word came out sharper than intended. "Lisa Hayes died in that crash. What's left isn't worth celebrating." "That's not true, and you know it." Lisa stood abruptly, walking to the window that overlooked the flight line. In the distance, she could see the Blue Angels practice aircraft, their distinctive blue and gold paint gleaming in the afternoon sun. "You want to know the truth, Doc? I dream about that day every night. Not about the children I saved. About the split second when I could have ejected earlier. When I could have saved myself and let physics take its course." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Sometimes I wonder if I chose wrong." Dr. Morrison's chair scraped against the floor as she stood. "Lisa, you saved 200 innocent lives. How can you question that choice? Because heroes are supposed to be whole. They're supposed to inspire people, not make them look away in disgust." Meanwhile, in the officers' club, Derek was holding court with a growing audience of junior pilots. His plan was simple, elegant, and cruel. During tomorrow's promotion ceremony, he would call Lisa forward for a special recognition of her contributions to base maintenance. In front of 300 officers, he would systematically humiliate her, using her scars and her lowly position to demonstrate what happened to people who didn't know their place. "It's perfect," Derek explained to his eager audience. "She can't refuse a direct order in front of the entire command structure. And once everyone sees what she really is, just a broken-down mechanic with delusions of grandeur, maybe she'll finally understand where she belongs." As the sun set over Naval Air Station Pensacola, 2 very different preparations were underway. Derek rehearsed his cruel performance, savoring the anticipation of public humiliation. Lisa sat in darkness, wrestling with demons that had haunted her for 3 years. Neither of them knew that Admiral Robert Foster had spent the afternoon making phone calls to Washington, requesting classified files that had been sealed since 2016. The truth, buried for 3 years beneath layers of operational security and medical privacy, was about to surface. Tomorrow's ceremony would change everything. The main hangar had been transformed into a ceremonial hall, its concrete floor polished to mirror brightness, beneath hundreds of folding chairs arranged in perfect military precision. 300 officers filled the space, their dress uniforms creating a sea of navy blue and gold. Overhead, the massive American flag hung suspended between the rafters, while spotlights illuminated the makeshift stage where Admiral Foster would conduct the evening's promotions. Lisa stood near the back wall, her dress uniform impeccable despite her reluctance to attend. Sarah had practically dragged her to the ceremony, insisting that hiding in her apartment would only fuel more gossip. The high collar of her uniform concealed most of the scarring on her neck, but nothing could hide the damaged left side of her face. "Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the presentation of colors," Admiral Foster's voice boomed across the hangar. The ceremony proceeded with military precision, promotions announced, medals awarded, speeches delivered with practiced authority. Lisa found herself relaxing slightly, hoping to slip away unnoticed once the formal proceedings concluded. That hope died when Derek Stone stepped to the microphone. "Admiral Foster, if I may," Derek's voice carried across the hangar with false humility. "I'd like to recognize someone whose contributions to our squadron often go unnoticed." Lisa's blood turned to ice. Around her, officers shifted in their seats, sensing something unusual in Derek's tone. "Would Lieutenant Commander Lisa Mitchell please come forward?" The request hit like a physical blow. Lisa's scarred hands gripped the back of the chair in front of her, her knuckles white with tension. 300 pairs of eyes turned toward her, creating a gauntlet of stairs she would have to navigate to reach the stage. "Come on, Mitchell." Derek's voice carried false encouragement. "Don't be shy." Admiral Foster frowned from his position at the podium, clearly unaware of Derek's intentions. Sarah grabbed Lisa's arm, whispering urgently, "You don't have to do this." But military protocol was absolute. A direct request in front of the entire command structure was effectively an order. Lisa's training overrode her terror, forcing her feet to move forward through the crowd. Each step felt like walking through quicksand. Officers turned to watch her approach, their expressions ranging from curiosity to poorly concealed disgust. The scarring on her face seemed to burn under the harsh spotlights as she climbed the steps to the stage. Derek's smile was predatory as she reached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant Commander Mitchell has been with us for 3 years, working tirelessly in aircraft maintenance." His pause was perfectly timed for maximum effect. "I thought it was time everyone got a good look at the dedication it takes to serve, regardless of personal challenges." The hangar fell silent, except for the hum of ventilation systems. Derek circled Lisa like a shark, his voice carrying to every corner of the space. "You see, some people think that just because they know a few technical specifications, they can play pilot. But real aviation requires more than book knowledge. It requires the right kind of person." His eyes fixed on her scars with theatrical disgust. "Someone who doesn't make others uncomfortable just by being in the room." Scattered, nervous laughter rippled through the audience. Lisa stood at rigid attention, her eyes fixed on a point above the crowd, tears threatening to spill despite her iron discipline. "I mean, let's be honest," Derek continued, his voice growing bolder with each word. "When you look like something out of a horror movie, maybe it's time to accept that you belong in the shadows, not around real warriors." The laughter died completely. Even Derek's supporters looked uncomfortable now, recognizing that he had crossed a line from military discipline into pure cruelty. Captain Thompson half rose from his seat, his face flushed with anger, but Lieutenant Chen grabbed his arm, holding him back. "So here's to Lieutenant Commander Mitchell." Derek raised an imaginary glass in mock salute. "A reminder that everyone has their place in the military, even if that place is where decent people don't have to look at them." Lisa's tears finally escaped, tracking silently down her scarred cheek. The hangar had become a tomb, 300 witnesses to systematic destruction of a human being's dignity. Derek leaned closer to the microphone for his final blow. "Maybe it's time you found work where your appearance won't be such a distraction." In the audience, Admiral Foster's expression had transformed from confusion to cold fury. His weathered hands gripped the arms of his chair as he watched the cruelest display of military misconduct he had witnessed in 40 years of service. The moment had come for truth. Admiral Foster rose from his chair with the deliberate precision of a man who had commanded aircraft carriers in 3 different conflicts. His weathered face carried an expression that made seasoned officers instinctively straighten in their seats. The hangar fell into absolute silence as he walked toward the stage, his footsteps echoing like hammer blows against the polished concrete. "Major Stone," his voice cut through the air like a blade. "Step away from that microphone, now." Derek's confident smile faltered as he recognized the deadly calm in the Admiral's tone. He moved aside reluctantly, confusion replacing his earlier arrogance. Admiral Foster took the microphone, his steel-gray eyes sweeping across the assembled officers before settling on Lisa's tear-stained face. When he spoke, His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you a story about the afternoon of September 15th, 2016 over Mobile, Alabama. The massive screens flanking the stage flickered to life, displaying aerial footage from that fateful day. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the video showed a civilian Cessna spiraling out of control, black smoke pouring from its engine. A family aircraft carrying 6 people, including 4 children from a local orphanage, suffered catastrophic engine failure at 3,000 feet. Their trajectory put them on a direct collision course with Riverside Elementary School. The footage switched to ground cameras, showing children playing in the schoolyard below, their innocent laughter a stark contrast to the approaching disaster. 212 children were in that playground. The impact would have killed them all. Admiral Foster's voice grew stronger, more commanding. At that moment, Blue Angel 6 was conducting a routine flyover for the Mobile Air Show. The pilot had perhaps 3 seconds to make a decision that would determine whether those children lived or died. The screen showed a blue and gold FA-18 Super Hornet streaking across the sky, its trajectory shifting dramatically as it moved to intercept the falling Cessna. Derek's face had gone pale as understanding began to dawn. Around the hangar, officers leaned forward in their seats, transfixed by the unfolding revelation. The pilot of Blue Angel 6 made a choice. She used her own aircraft as a shield, redirecting the civilian plane away from the school and into an empty field. The collision destroyed both aircraft. The footage showed the moment of impact, a brilliant fireball against the Alabama sky, followed by the Cessna's controlled descent into farmland far from the school. The civilian aircraft landed safely. All 6 occupants survived. 212 children continued playing, unaware that they had just witnessed the greatest act of heroism in naval aviation history. Admiral Foster turned to face Lisa directly, his voice softening with respect and admiration. The pilot of Blue Angel 6 ejected at the last possible second. Her parachute failed to deploy properly due to the low altitude. She suffered burns over 40% of her body, multiple fractures and injuries that ended her flying career forever. The hangar erupted in gasps and whispers as 300 officers began to understand the magnitude of what they were witnessing. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Foster's voice rose to fill every corner of the massive space, "allow me to introduce Commander Lisa Hayes, call sign Phoenix, the pilot who sacrificed everything to save those children. The woman Major Stone just humiliated is the greatest hero this squadron has ever produced." The silence that followed was deafening. Derek staggered backward as if physically struck, his face a mask of horror and disbelief. Around the hangar, officers rose to their feet in spontaneous recognition, their earlier laughter replaced by shame and awe. Lisa stood frozen at the microphone, her carefully constructed anonymity shattered beyond repair. The weight of 300 stares felt different now, no longer filled with disgust, but with reverence and guilt. "The aircraft Major Stone flies today," Admiral Foster continued relentlessly, "is the same model Commander Hayes sacrificed to save innocent lives. The technical knowledge he mocked comes from someone who flew these machines with a skill he will never possess." Captain Thompson was openly weeping now, finally understanding why Lisa's voice had seemed so familiar. Lieutenant Chen stared in wonder at the woman who had saved her life just days before. Derek tried to speak, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly as the full weight of his cruelty crashed down upon him. Admiral Foster's final words rang out like a benediction. "Commander Hayes has spent 3 years hiding her identity, believing herself unworthy of recognition. Tonight we remind her and ourselves what true heroism looks like." The applause began slowly, building to a thunderous crescendo that shook the hangar's steel framework. But Lisa was already moving, pushing through the crowd toward the exit, unable to bear the transformation from humiliation to veneration. Behind her, Derek Stone stood alone on the stage, his career and reputation crumbling like ash in the wind. Lisa's apartment door slammed shut with enough force to rattle the windows. She collapsed against it, her dress uniform wrinkled and tear-stained, her carefully maintained composure finally cracking under the weight of exposure. The walls of her sanctuary felt like they were closing in, the familiar space now contaminated by the knowledge that her secret was gone forever. Her hands shook as she fumbled with the uniform buttons, desperate to shed the formal attire that had made her a target. The mirror in her bedroom reflected a stranger, not the invisible maintenance officer she had become, nor the confident pilot she had once been, but something caught between worlds, belonging to neither. The first knock came 20 minutes later. Sarah's voice carried through the door, urgent and concerned. "Lisa, open up. We need to talk." "Go away." The words came out as a broken whisper. "Like hell I will. You've been hiding for 3 years and I'm not letting you disappear now." More voices joined Sarah's. Dr. Morrison, Captain Thompson, even Lieutenant Chen. They gathered outside her door like a concerned family, their presence both comforting and terrifying. Meanwhile, across the base, Derek Stone sat in Colonel Bradley's office, facing the most humiliating moment of his military career. The colonel's weathered face showed no mercy as he reviewed the evening's events. 37 witnesses have already filed formal complaints about your conduct tonight." Bradley's voice was ice-cold. "Conduct unbecoming an officer, harassment, abuse of authority. The list goes on." Derek stared at his hands, the magnitude of his mistake finally sinking in. "Sir, I had no idea who she was." "That's exactly the problem, Major. You saw a fellow officer with visible injuries and decided she was fair game for your entertainment." Bradley leaned forward, his eyes blazing. "Did it ever occur to you to wonder how she got those scars? To consider that maybe, just maybe, she earned them in service to her country?" The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Derek's throat felt raw as he tried to find words that could somehow undo the damage. "What happens now, sir?" Now you face a formal board of inquiry. Your conduct tonight was witnessed by 300 officers, including an Admiral. Your career is over, Stone." Back at Lisa's apartment, Dr. Morrison had finally convinced her to open the door. Lisa sat on her couch, still in her dress uniform, while her unexpected support network filled the small living room. "I can't go back," Lisa whispered, her voice barely audible. "Everyone knows now. They'll expect me to be her again, the hero, the legend, but I'm not her anymore." Captain Thompson knelt beside her chair, his own eyes red with unshed tears. "Lisa, I flew with you for 2 years. I watched you thread that Hornet through formations that would terrify most pilots. You were the best of us." "Were," Lisa emphasized the past tense. "That person died in the crash." "Bullshit." Sarah's profanity cut through the gentle conversation like a blade. "That person saved Jessica's life 3 days ago. That person has been keeping our aircraft flying safely for 3 years. You didn't die in that crash, you just convinced yourself you did." Lieutenant Chen spoke for the first time, her young voice trembling with emotion. "Ma'am, when I was spinning toward the ground, your voice was the only thing that saved me. Not because of who you used to be, but because of who you are right now. Doctor." Morrison watched the exchange with professional interest, recognizing the first real breakthrough in 3 years of therapy. "Lisa, what are you most afraid of?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Lisa's scarred hands traced the damaged skin on her face as she searched for an answer. "I'm afraid of disappointing them," she finally whispered. "Everyone wants Lisa Hayes back, the perfect pilot, the fearless leader. But what if this broken version is all that's left?" Admiral Foster's voice came from the doorway, where he stood with the quiet dignity of a man who had seen too much war. "Then we'll take the broken version, because even broken, you're worth 10 of Derek Stone." He entered the small apartment, his presence filling the space with calm authority. "Commander Hayes, I've spent the evening reviewing your service record. Your technical reports over the past 3 years have prevented 4 potential accidents. Your knowledge has saved lives, even from the maintenance bay." Lisa looked up at him through her tears. "But I can't fly anymore. My hands shake, my reflexes are shot. What good is a pilot who can't pilot? Who says you have to pilot to lead?" Admiral Foster's smile was gentle but determined. "The Navy needs instructors, Lisa. People who can teach the next generation not just how to fly, but why we fly. People who understand the true cost of service." As her friends and colleagues surrounded her with support, Lisa felt something she hadn't experienced in 3 years, the possibility of hope. But healing would take time, and the road ahead remained uncertain. The formal hearing room in Building 7 had witnessed countless military tribunals, but few carried the weight of the proceedings unfolding this grey Tuesday morning. Colonel Bradley presided over the 3-member panel, flanked by Captain Sarah Williams from JAG and Commander Robert Chen, Jessica's father, who had requested to participate after learning of the previous week's events. Derek Stone sat at the defendant's table in his dress uniform, the gold oak leaves on his shoulders, feeling heavier than lead. His military attorney, Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb, shuffled through papers with the resigned air of a man defending the indefensible. "Major Stone," Colonel Bradley's voice cut through the sterile air, "you stand accused of conduct unbecoming an officer, harassment of a subordinate, and abuse of authority. How do you plead?" "Guilty, sir." The words came out as barely a whisper. The admission sent ripples through the small gallery where witnesses waited to testify. Sarah Rodriguez sat in the front row, her maintenance coveralls replaced by dress blues, her face a mask of controlled anger. "The panel will hear testimony regarding the pattern of behavior leading to the incident of October 8th, Bradley announced. For the next 2 hours, witness after witness took the stand. Lieutenant Chen described Derek's dangerous formation orders and his pattern of belittling junior officers. Master Chief Williams testified about Derek's treatment of enlisted personnel. Even Lieutenant Wilson, Derek's former ally, reluctantly admitted to witnessing months of increasingly cruel behavior. The most damaging testimony came from Dr. Morrison, who spoke in clinical terms about the psychological impact of systematic harassment on trauma survivors. Major Stone's actions weren't isolated incidents, she explained to the panel. They represented a calculated campaign to destroy someone who was already struggling with severe PTSD and survivor's guilt. Derek's attorney attempted a defense based on ignorance. "My client had no knowledge of Lieutenant Commander Mitchell's true identity or service record." Commander Chen leaned forward, his voice sharp with paternal fury. "Counselor, are you suggesting that visible scars from military service make someone fair game for harassment?" The question hung in the air unanswered. Meanwhile, across the base, Lisa stood in Hangar 7 facing her own reckoning. Admiral Foster had requested her presence for what he called an important conversation about the future. "I've been thinking about your situation, Commander," Foster said, using her correct rank for the first time in 3 years. "The Navy has invested too much in your training to waste it on routine maintenance." Lisa's scarred hands gripped the edge of the workbench. "Sir, with respect, my flying days are over. The medical board was clear about that. I'm not talking about operational flying, I'm talking about instruction." Foster pulled out a tablet showing her a proposal that made her heart race. "The Navy's establishing a new program at Pensacola, Advanced Tactical Instruction for Carrier Pilots. We need someone who understands both the technical aspects and the real-world consequences of split-second decisions." The offer was everything she had never dared to hope for, a chance to return to aviation without the physical demands of operational flying. But the weight of expectation felt crushing. "Admiral, what if I'm not ready? What if I can't live up to what people expect from Lisa Hayes?" Foster's expression softened. "Then you'll be exactly what those young pilots need, someone who understands that heroes aren't perfect. They're just people who choose to do the right thing when it matters most." Back in the hearing room, the panel was reaching its verdict. Derek had been given the opportunity to speak in his own defense, but his words only deepened the hole he had dug. "I know what I did was wrong," he said, his voice cracking, "but I want the panel to know something that came to light yesterday." He paused, gathering courage for what might be his only chance at redemption. 3 years ago, my best friend, Lieutenant Marcus Patterson, was shot down over Syria. Someone led a rescue mission that saved his life, got him to a field hospital. He died 2 days later from his injuries, but those extra days meant everything to his family. The room fell silent as Derek continued. "Yesterday I learned that the pilot who saved Marcus was Commander Hayes. She risked her life for someone she'd never met, and I repaid that by—" His voice broke completely. "I have no excuse for what I did. I just wanted the panel to know that even when I was destroying her, she had already saved the person who mattered most to me." Colonel Bradley's expression remained impassive as he delivered the verdict. "Major Derek Stone, this panel finds you guilty on all charges. You are hereby reduced in rank to captain, forfeited 6 months' pay, and transferred immediately to Naval Air Station Lemoore for the remainder of your service obligation. This hearing is adjourned." As Derek was led away, he caught sight of Lisa standing in the hallway. Their eyes met for a moment, his filled with shame and regret, hers with something that might have been forgiveness. "Commander Hayes," he said quietly, as the guards paused. "I'm sorry. For everything." Lisa nodded once, the gesture carrying more weight than any words could convey. Later that evening, she found herself back in Hangar 7, but this time she wasn't alone. Captain Thompson, Lieutenant Chen, Sarah, and Dr. Morrison had gathered around a small table where Admiral Foster had spread out the plans for the new instruction program. "So what do you say, Phoenix?" Thompson used her old call sign with gentle affection. "Ready to teach the next generation how to really fly?" Lisa looked around at the faces of people who had become her family, then up at the aircraft that had once been her partners in an aerial ballet. For the first time in 3 years, the future held possibility instead of just survival. "When do we start?" 6 months later, the morning sun painted Naval Air Station Pensacola in shades of gold and possibility. Commander Lisa Hayes, recently promoted from lieutenant commander, stood on the flight line watching her first class of advanced tactical students prepare for their final examination. The promotion had come with Admiral Foster's new instruction program, a recognition that her value to the Navy extended far beyond her past heroics. The scars on her face had faded slightly with time and treatment, but more importantly, they no longer defined her. The baseball cap was gone, replaced by the confident bearing of an instructor who had earned every ounce of respect she commanded. "All right, people." Lisa's voice carried across the tarmac with the authority of someone who had lived through every scenario she taught. "Today's exercise simulates a carrier approach in heavy weather with a wounded aircraft. Lieutenant Martinez, you're flying with a simulated hydraulic failure. Lieutenant Park, you're his wingman with orders to escort him home safely." The 8 pilots of Advanced Tactical Squadron 12 hung on her every word. Over the past months, they had learned that Commander Hayes didn't just teach procedures. She taught survival, decision-making, and the weight of responsibility that came with flying $50 million aircraft. Lieutenant Jessica Chen, now graduated and serving as Lisa's assistant instructor, smiled as she watched her former savior work. The young pilot had requested assignment to the program specifically to work with Lisa, understanding that she was witnessing something extraordinary, the rebirth of a legend. "Remember," Lisa continued, "the goal isn't to be a hero. The goal is to bring everyone home alive. Heroes are just people who make the right choice when everything goes wrong." As the aircraft taxied toward the runway, Captain Thompson approached from the control tower. His friendship with Lisa had deepened over the months, built on shared memories and mutual respect that transcended their past. "How are they looking?" he asked, watching the formation take off with practiced precision. "Better than we were at their age," Lisa replied with a slight smile. "Less arrogant, more focused. Maybe that's progress." The radio crackled with professional chatter as the exercise began. Lisa monitored every transmission, her trained ear catching nuances that revealed each pilot's stress level and decision-making process. When Lieutenant Martinez's simulated emergency began, she watched with quiet pride as he followed her teachings exactly: calm assessment, clear communication, methodical problem-solving. "Phoenix Base, this is Warrior 7. Martinez's voice carried controlled tension. "Declaring emergency. Hydraulic pressure dropping. Controls getting sluggish." "Warrior 7, Phoenix Base copies. Warrior 8, take escort position and assess damage." Lisa nodded approvingly as Lieutenant Park smoothly moved into formation, visually inspecting his wingman's aircraft and reporting back with textbook precision. These pilots understood that aviation was a team sport where individual heroics could get everyone killed. The exercise concluded successfully 20 minutes later, both aircraft landing safely despite the simulated emergency. As the pilots climbed out of their cockpits, Lisa felt a familiar surge of satisfaction, not from her own performance, but from watching others succeed. "Debrief in 30 minutes, she announced. "Martinez, excellent emergency procedures. Park, your escort work was textbook perfect. The rest of you, we'll discuss what you observed and how you would have handled the situation." As the students headed to the briefing room, Admiral Foster appeared beside her, his expression carrying news of significance. "Lisa, I have something for you." He handed her an official envelope bearing the seal of the Secretary of the Navy. "This arrived this morning from Washington." Inside was a citation for the Distinguished Flying Cross, along with a personal letter from the Secretary commending her service both as a pilot and as an instructor. But more meaningful was the second document, official authorization to establish the Lisa Hayes Center for Advanced Naval Aviation Instruction, with her as the founding director. "They're naming the program after you," Foster explained. "Your methods have already prevented 3 potential accidents at other bases. The Navy wants to expand this training fleet wide. Lisa stared at the documents, overwhelmed by the recognition. 3 years ago, she had believed her service was over. Now she was being asked to shape the future of naval aviation. "There's one more thing," Foster continued. "The ceremony is next week. Full dress with representatives from Washington. They want to do this right." That evening, Lisa stood in her apartment looking at her dress uniform hanging in the closet. The ribbons and decorations told the story of a career that had taken her from the depths of despair to heights she had never imagined possible. A knock at her door interrupted her reflection. Sarah stood in the hallway holding a bottle of champagne and wearing a grin that could have powered the entire base. "Figured you might need some help celebrating," Sarah said, pushing past Lisa into the apartment. "Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't talk yourself out of accepting this honor." They were joined by Dr. Morrison, Thompson, Chen, and a dozen other friends who had supported Lisa through her darkest period. As they filled her small apartment with laughter and conversation, Lisa realized that she had found something more valuable than her lost flying career. She had found a family. "To Commander Hayes," Thompson raised his glass in a toast, "who taught us that sometimes the greatest flights happen with both feet on the ground." As the celebration continued around her, Lisa stepped onto her balcony and looked up at the stars. Somewhere in that vast darkness, she could almost hear the whisper of jet engines and the voice of the pilot she used to be, finally at peace with the instructor she had become. The phoenix had risen from the ashes, not as the same bird that had fallen, but as something stronger, wiser, and infinitely more valuable. The main hangar had been transformed once again, but this time the ceremony carried a weight of genuine honor rather than cruel spectacle. Flags from every naval aviation squadron lined the walls, while a podium draped in navy blue stood beneath a massive banner reading Lisa Hayes Center for Advanced Naval Aviation Instruction. 500 officers filled the space, their presence a testament to the impact one instructor had made across the entire fleet. Commander Lisa Hayes stood at attention in her dress uniform, the ribbons on her chest telling a story of service, sacrifice, and redemption. The Distinguished Flying Cross gleamed beside her other decorations, but it was the simple instructor's wings that meant the most, earned not through past glory, but through present dedication. Admiral Foster approached the podium with the measured dignity of a man about to witness history. Behind him, a delegation from Washington included the Secretary of the Navy himself, along with representatives from every major naval aviation command. "Ladies and gentlemen," Foster's voice carried across the hangar, "we gather today not just to honor past heroism, but to celebrate the future of naval aviation instruction." The ceremony began with a video presentation showcasing the success of Lisa's program. Statistics flashed across the screens, accident rates down 30% at bases using her methods, pilot confidence scores at all-time highs, and testimonials from squadron commanders across the fleet praising the quality of graduates from her advanced tactical courses. But the most powerful moment came when Lieutenant Martinez stepped to the microphone, his voice steady with conviction. "6 months ago, I thought I knew how to fly. Commander Hayes taught me the difference between flying and surviving. Last week, when my squadron faced a real emergency over the Gulf, her training saved 3 lives. She didn't just teach us procedures, she taught us how to think under pressure, how to make decisions when everything goes wrong." One by one, her former students took the stage, each sharing stories of how Lisa's instruction had prepared them for real-world challenges. Lieutenant Park described successfully landing a damaged aircraft on a carrier deck in heavy seas. Lieutenant Chen spoke about leading a search and rescue mission that saved 2 downed pilots. Each testimony reinforced the same truth: Lisa Hayes had found her true calling. When the Secretary of the Navy took the podium, his words carried the weight of official recognition. "Commander Hayes, your service represents the finest traditions of naval aviation. But your greatest contribution isn't what you did in the cockpit 3 years ago, it's what you've done in the classroom every day since then." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "The Lisa Hayes Center for Advanced Naval Aviation Instruction will serve as the cornerstone of our pilot training program for the next generation. Your methods will be taught at every naval aviation base, ensuring that your legacy extends far beyond any single heroic act." The formal presentation of the center's charter brought thunderous applause, but Lisa's attention was drawn to a familiar figure in the audience. Derek Stone, now Captain Stone, sat in the back row, his presence unexpected but somehow appropriate. After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed into reception lines and congratulations, Derek approached her with obvious nervousness. "Commander Hayes," he said quietly, "I wanted to thank you." Lisa studied his face, seeing genuine change in the man who had once been her tormentor. "Thank me? The transfer to Lemoore. It saved my career. More importantly, it saved me." Derek's voice carried hard-won humility. "I've spent the last 6 months learning what real leadership looks like. I'll never be the pilot you are, but maybe I can be the officer I should have been all along." Lisa extended her hand, and Derek shook it with obvious relief. "We all make mistakes, Derek. What matters is what we learn from them." As Derek walked away, Dr. Morrison appeared beside her, a knowing smile on her face. "That was very gracious," the psychologist observed. "He's not the same person who humiliated me," Lisa replied. "Neither am I." The reception continued for hours, filled with congratulations, professional discussions about expanding the program, and personal moments with the people who had supported her journey. But the most meaningful conversation came near the end, when Admiral Foster pulled her aside for a private word. "Lisa, I have one more offer for you. The Navy wants to promote you to captain and give you command of all advanced tactical instruction programs fleet-wide. It would mean moving to Washington, working directly with the Pentagon." The offer was extraordinary, a chance to influence naval aviation at the highest levels. But Lisa looked around the hangar at her students, her colleagues, her chosen family, and knew her answer. "Thank you, Admiral, but I belong here, in the classroom, on the flight line, working with the next generation of pilots. This is where I can make the biggest difference." Foster smiled as if he had expected that response. "I thought you might say that. The offer stands whenever you're ready." As the evening wound down, Lisa found herself alone in the hangar, surrounded by the aircraft that had once been her partners and were now her teaching tools. The FA-18 Super Hornets gleamed under the lights, their blue and gold paint schemes a reminder of dreams both lost and found. Captain Thompson joined her in the quiet space, his presence comfortable and familiar. "Any regrets?" he asked. Lisa considered the question seriously. 3 years ago, she had been Commander Lisa Hayes, Blue Angel pilot, aerial artist, legend in the making. Now she was Commander Lisa Hayes, instructor, mentor, shaper of the future. The scars on her face caught the light as she smiled. "None," she said with absolute certainty. "The pilot I was saved 212 children in one moment of heroism. The instructor I've become will save thousands of pilots over a lifetime of teaching. I think that's a fair trade." Outside, the Florida night sky stretched endlessly above the base, filled with stars and possibilities. Tomorrow would bring new students, new challenges, new opportunities to pass on the lessons learned through sacrifice and redemption. The Phoenix had not just risen from the ashes, she had learned to soar in ways she never imagined possible. In the distance, the sound of jet engines preparing for night training exercises echoed across the base, carrying with them the promise that somewhere in that darkness, pilots trained by Lisa Hayes were making the skies safer for everyone. The circle was complete, but the story would continue forever. The autumn sun cast long shadows across the flight line at Naval Air Station Pensacola as Captain Lisa Hayes walked among the newest class of advanced tactical students. 7 years had transformed both the base and the woman who had once hidden in its maintenance hangars. The Lisa Hayes Center for Advanced Naval Aviation Instruction now occupied 3 hangars and trained over 200 pilots annually, its methods adopted by air forces around the world. Lisa's promotion to captain had come 2 years earlier, along with command of all tactical instruction programs on the East Coast. The scars on her face had faded to thin silver lines that caught the light when she smiled, which happened far more often these days. Her hair, now touched with premature gray from years of responsibility, was pulled back in the confident style of a woman who had found her place in the world. "Captain Hayes," Lieutenant Commander Sarah Rodriguez called from across the tarmac. Sarah had earned her commission through the Navy's enlisted-to-officer program, inspired by watching Lisa's transformation. Now she served as Lisa's deputy director, their friendship having evolved into a professional partnership that made the center one of the most effective training facilities in the military. "The delegation from the Royal Navy is here for the international exchange briefing," Sarah reported, her voice carrying the easy familiarity of old friends. Lisa nodded, checking her watch. The center now hosted pilots from allied nations. sharing the tactical innovations that had grown from her original teaching methods. It was a responsibility she wore with quiet pride. As they walked toward the briefing room, Lisa caught sight of a familiar figure inspecting one of the training aircraft. Admiral Foster, now retired but serving as a civilian consultant, still visited regularly to observe the program he had helped create. "Robert," Lisa called, using his first name as their friendship now allowed, "how are the new modifications looking?" Foster turned with the smile of a man watching his greatest professional achievement continue to flourish. "The updated simulation systems are remarkable. Your students will be able to experience scenarios we could never safely replicate in actual flight." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a sleek sedan bearing Pentagon plates. From it emerged Admiral Patricia Chen, formerly Lieutenant Jessica Chen, now serving as the Navy's youngest flag officer and Director of Aviation Training. Her rapid rise through the ranks had been fueled by the leadership skills she'd learned under Lisa's tutelage. "Captain Hayes," Jessica's greeting carried both professional respect and personal warmth. "I have news from Washington." They moved to Lisa's office, a space that reflected her journey from broken pilot to accomplished leader. The walls displayed photos of her students, letters of commendation, and a single framed image of Blue Angel 6 from her flying days, not hidden in shame, but displayed with quiet acceptance of her past. "The Secretary wants to offer you Admiral's stars," Jessica announced without preamble. "Command of the Naval Aviation Training Command. It would mean overseeing all pilot training programs Navy-wide." Lisa sat back in her chair, considering the magnitude of the offer. Admiral Lisa Hayes. It had a certain ring to it, but her eyes drifted to the window overlooking the flight line where her current students were preparing for afternoon exercises. "What would happen to the center?" she asked. "It would continue, of course, but you'd be in Washington, setting policy rather than teaching directly." The offer represented the pinnacle of naval aviation leadership, a chance to influence training at the highest levels. But Lisa had learned the difference between advancement and fulfillment. "I'm honored by the offer, Jessica, but my answer is the same as it was 7 years ago. I belong here, in the classroom, on the flight line. This is where I can make the biggest difference." Jessica smiled as if she had expected that response. "The Admiral said you'd probably say that. She also said to tell you the offer stands permanently, whenever you're ready to take on Washington." After Jessica left, Lisa walked alone to Hangar 7, the place where her transformation had begun. The space now served as a memorial to naval aviation heroes, with a prominent display honoring the September 15, 2016 rescue that had defined her life. But it was the smaller display that meant the most, a simple plaque listing the names of pilots who had graduated from her program and gone on to save lives in real-world situations. The list grew longer every year, a testament to the ripple effects of good training and strong leadership. Captain Thompson appeared beside her, his hair now completely grey, but his eyes still sharp with the intelligence that had made him an exceptional pilot. "Thinking about the old days?" he asked. "Thinking about the future," Lisa replied. "Martinez just got command of VFA 87. Park is being considered for the Blue Angels. Chen is already an admiral. Sometimes I wonder if this is what I was meant to do all along." Thompson studied the memorial display, his expression thoughtful. "You know, I've been thinking about that crash a lot lately. What if it wasn't just about saving those children? What if it was about putting you exactly where you needed to be to save all the pilots who came after?" The thought was both humbling and comforting. Lisa had spent years believing the crash had ended her story, when in reality, it had simply begun a new chapter. As the sun set over the base, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Lisa made her way home to the small house she had purchased near the water. The evening routine was peaceful, dinner on the deck, reading technical journals, preparing for the next day's lessons. But tonight was different. Tonight, she pulled out a letter that had arrived that morning, postmarked from Mobile, Alabama. Inside was a graduation announcement from Riverside Elementary School, the school she had saved 7 years earlier. The graduating class had voted to dedicate their ceremony to Commander Lisa Hayes, the pilot who gave us the chance to grow up. Attached was a photo of 212 young adults in caps and gowns, their smiles bright with possibility. Among them was a note from the principal. "These children are now doctors, teachers, engineers, and yes, even pilots. Your sacrifice gave them the chance to become who they were meant to be." Lisa set the letter aside and walked to her deck, looking up at the stars that had once been her domain. The night sky no longer called to her with the ache of loss, but with the satisfaction of purpose fulfilled. Somewhere in that darkness, pilots she had trained were flying missions, making decisions, bringing their squadrons home safely. The ripples of her teaching would continue long after she was gone, touching lives she would never meet, preventing tragedies she would never know about. The price of heroism had been her flying career, her unmarked face, her simple dreams of aerial perfection. But the reward had been something far greater, the chance to multiply her impact across generations of aviators. Captain Lisa Hayes, instructor, mentor, and guardian of the future, smiled as she watched a formation of training aircraft pass overhead, their navigation lights twinkling like moving stars. The Phoenix had not just risen from the ashes, she had learned to teach others how to soar. The story of Lisa Hayes reminds us that true heroism isn't measured by a single moment of glory, but by the courage to rebuild when everything seems lost. Her journey from celebrated pilot to broken survivor to inspiring leader shows us that our greatest defeats can become the foundation for our most meaningful victories. Lisa's transformation teaches us several profound lessons. Resilience is a choice. When life strips away everything we thought defined us, we face a fundamental choice: remain trapped by what we've lost, or discover who we can become. Lisa chose to rise, not as the same person she was before, but as someone stronger and more purposeful. True leadership serves others. The pilot, Lisa Hayes, saved lives in a moment of crisis. The instructor, Lisa Hayes, saved lives through years of dedicated teaching. Sometimes our greatest impact comes not from our individual achievements, but from how we lift others up. Scars tell stories of survival. Lisa's physical scars became symbols not of defeat, but of sacrifice and strength. They reminded everyone who saw her that heroes aren't perfect. They're people who choose to do what's right, regardless of the cost. Purpose can be reborn. When her flying career ended, Lisa thought her story was over. Instead, she discovered that her true calling was teaching others to fly safely, to make good decisions under pressure, and to understand the weight of responsibility that comes with serving others. The ripple effects of Lisa's second chapter continue to spread. Through every pilot she trained, every life they save, every student they inspire, her legacy proves that sometimes our greatest contributions come not from what we achieve for ourselves, but from what we make possible for others. Your thoughts matter to us. This story of redemption, sacrifice, and the power of second chances was crafted to honor all those who serve and inspire. What resonated most with you about Lisa's journey? Was it her moment of heroism, her struggle with identity, or her ultimate transformation into a leader who multiplies her impact through teaching? If this story moved you, please comment Phoenix below, so we know you experienced Lisa's complete journey from the ashes to the stars. Your engagement helps us understand which stories truly connect with our community. Don't miss our other inspiring military stories. Check out the cards below for more tales of courage, honor, and the unbreakable spirit of those who serve. Each story celebrates the heroes among us, both the ones who make headlines and the ones who quietly change the world, one life at a time. Remember, heroes aren't born perfect. They're forged in the fires of adversity and refined by their choice to serve something greater than themselves. Lisa Hayes proves that sometimes our greatest flights happen with both feet firmly on the ground, lifting others toward the sky. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Your support means everything. What story of military heroism or second chances would you like to see next? Share your suggestions in the comments below.